We see these headlines all the time about data breaches.
Mm-hmm.
But when it's a hospital or a doctor's office,
Yeah.
it just hits different. You know what I mean?
It does. It feels way more personal, right?
Yeah, my credit card getting hacked
Right.
is one thing,
Mm-hmm.
but like my medical records,
Yeah.
that's my health. That's
That's the whole other level of scary.
it is scary.
Absolutely.
And we're not just talking about a couple isolated incidents here either.
Right.
Healthcare providers, they're practically in the bullseye for cyber attacks.
Yeah, for sure.
We've got 3 different breaches that we're going to deep dive into today.
Okay.
North Bay Healthcare, River Region Cardiology, and Delta Health.
Wow.
That's over 1.2 million people
That's a lot of people.
impacted.
Yeah.
Just from those 3.
Yeah.
So it really makes you wonder,
Mm.
what does this all mean for everyone listening? What are the real risks here?
Right. Well, I think a good place to start is just understanding that these healthcare breaches, they aren't new. They've been happening for years.
Yeah.
But what we're seeing now is the scale.
Okay.
And the boldness of the attacks is just getting bigger and bigger. For example, a report by GuidePoint Security
Mm-hmm.
found that healthcare was the 4th most targeted sector
Wow.
for ransomware attacks just in 2024.
4th most targeted.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, so cyber criminals are clearly
Yeah, they're seeing dollar signs.
seeing those dollar signs when they
Signs.
look at hospitals and clinics.
Yeah.
But why healthcare specifically? I mean, is it
Yeah.
just about the money?
Well, money is definitely a factor, but it's more than that. So first off, the data itself is incredibly valuable. I mean, think about it.
Right.
Your medical record has all sorts of information
Mm-hmm.
that can be used for identity theft, insurance fraud, all kinds of things.
Oh, yeah.
On the dark web, a single medical record can go for up to $1,000.
$1,000
Yeah.
for one record.
Which makes it way more valuable than like stolen credit card information.
Yeah. That is a pretty hefty price tag for somebody's personal information.
It is.
It's kind of unsettling to think about that being bought and sold
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah. It's a big business, unfortunately.
So then that brings us to the second reason why healthcare is such a prime target, which is the pressure to pay the ransoms.
Exactly.
I mean, hospitals and clinics are providing these essential services.
Right.
They can't afford to have their systems down for very long.
Right. They need to be up and running
Yeah.
at all times.
Makes them way more likely to pay up quickly.
Exactly. And that's what the attackers are banking on.
So it's almost like they're holding patient care hostage in a way.
Yeah. It's a terrifying thought.
It is scary. And we're seeing these attackers getting bolder and bolder with their tactics, too.
Yeah, for sure. I mean,
Okay.
one example is the group Alpha V. I don't know if you've heard of them, but they targeted Change Healthcare, which is a huge healthcare technology company.
Okay.
That attack affected something like 190 million people.
190 million people.
Just from that one attack.
Oh, my God.
And I think that success has probably emboldened other groups
Right, yeah.
to go after similar targets.
Okay, so let's maybe shift gears a little bit and
Yeah.
take a closer look at the 3 specific breaches that we talked about at the beginning.
Yeah, let's do it.
What details can you share that would really bring this threat home for our listeners?
Okay, well, let's start with North Bay Healthcare in California.
Okay.
This breach affected over 569,000 individuals. And the scope of the data that was potentially compromised is really alarming. We're talking names, addresses, social security numbers, financial information, medical records, even biometric data.
So basically everything.
Pretty much everything, yeah.
Wow. Okay, so that's a
Yeah.
pretty comprehensive data haul.
Yeah.
Seems like they were really after
Yeah, anything they could get their hands on.
anything they could get their hands on. What about River Region Cardiology in Alabama?
Right, so this one highlights how vulnerable
Okay.
healthcare providers can be through their third-party vendors.
Okay.
So in this case, River Region Cardiology wasn't directly attacked. It was a vendor they were using that had a security vulnerability.
Oh, wow.
And the attackers were able to exploit that vulnerability to get into River Region's systems.
So it's like a domino effect.
It is.
One weak link in the chain can bring down the whole system.
One weak link can compromise everything.
And if a provider isn't careful about who they're working with,
Right.
it could put their patients' data at risk.
Absolutely.
Oh, wow.
And it's not just about that initial attack either.
Okay.
After the breach, the ransomware group Bionlian, they claim to have stolen 1.2 terabytes of data from River Region Cardiology.
Oh, wow.
And they actually threatened to publish that data on the dark web
Oh, gosh.
unless a ransom was paid.
Wow. So they're really
Yeah,
upping the stakes.
absolutely. And this double extortion tactic where they steal data and disrupt operations
Like,
is becoming more and more common. It really puts organizations in a tough spot.
Yeah, so it's not just about preventing the attack, then it's about having a plan in place
Right.
if the worst does happen.
Exactly.
And that's probably where a company like Stonefly can come in. I know they offer data protection and disaster recovery solutions.
Yeah, they do.
And having that secure backup could make a huge difference in these ransomware
Like,
situations.
for sure, their solutions can help protect your data,
Okay.
even if your systems are breached.
Okay.
They provide secure backups, reliable disaster recovery, and a range of tools to help enhance your overall cybersecurity posture.
So it sounds like Stonefly could be a real lifesaver for these healthcare providers
Yeah.
who are trying to navigate this.
It's a dangerous landscape out there.
Yeah, increasingly dangerous cyber landscape.
Yeah.
So for our listeners who want to learn more, they can visit stonefly.com
Yes.
or contact sales at stonefly.com to get in touch with their team.
Definitely.
Okay, so now what about that third breach, Delta Health?
Right.
What makes that case stand out?
Well, the Delta Health breach, which happened in Colorado, is a reminder that even after a breach is contained, there's still a lot of work to be done.
Okay.
So the breach itself happened in May of 2024,
Mm-hmm.
but full notification to the individuals who were affected didn't go out until January 2025,
That's almost a year.
almost a year.
Wow. That seems like an awfully long time to wait to get information.
It is.
What could cause that kind of a delay?
Well, I mean, these investigations can be really complex and time-consuming.
Yeah.
Forensic teams need to figure out how the attackers got in, what data was accessed, who was affected.
Yeah.
But for the victims, that delay can be incredibly frustrating.
Oh, yeah.
They're left in the dark wondering if their information is out there being misused.
Yeah, and that really highlights the need for transparency and timely communication from these healthcare providers.
It does.
Patients deserve to know what happened and what steps are being taken to protect their data.
Absolutely. I completely agree.
Yeah.
And it's not just about the practical implications either. Okay.
There's also the emotional toll to consider.
Yeah.
Knowing that your most sensitive health information is out there can be incredibly stressful and anxiety-provoking.
It is a violation of that trust that we place in our healthcare providers.
Exactly.
Which brings us to, I think, a really crucial question.
Okay.
What does all of this actually mean for the people listening?
Right.
What are the tangible consequences of these breaches? I mean, we talked about the financial risks,
Yeah.
but what about the impact on their health and well-being?
That's a really important point.
Yeah.
Beyond identity theft and financial fraud, healthcare data breaches can actually have serious consequences for your health and well-being.
Oh, wow.
I mean, imagine a scenario where your medical records are corrupted or inaccessible because of a cyber attack.
Right.
This could lead to delayed or even incorrect treatments, potentially with life-altering consequences.
Yeah, that's terrifying. So we're not just talking about the inconvenience of changing your passwords or something.
Grown.
We're talking about potential risks to our health. Absolutely. This
Yeah.
is serious stuff.
This is serious stuff.
Yeah.
And then there's also that erosion of trust. When our healthcare providers suffer these breaches,
Yeah.
it makes us question whether they can really keep our information safe.
Right.
And that can lead to people delaying care or avoiding treatment altogether, which obviously has
which has its own implications.
implications for their health.
Big time.
So these breaches are a major threat,
Yeah.
and the consequences can be really, really dire.
They can.
But before we all spiral into a pit of despair,
Right.
let's talk about what we can do to protect ourselves.
Okay.
Surely there are steps that we can take
Yeah.
to mitigate these risks.
Absolutely. While we can't control what happens to healthcare providers, we can take steps to protect our own data and just be more informed patients.
Okay.
And it starts with the basics: strong passwords, multi-factor authentication,
Okay.
being vigilant about phishing attempts. And it's also important to choose healthcare providers who prioritize cybersecurity and invest in robust solutions like those offered by Stonefly.
Stonefly, again, it sounds like they
Got it going on?
Yeah, they really do have that comprehensive suite of solutions for protecting sensitive data.
They do.
And I think we're going to dive deeper into those solutions later on in the episode.
Yeah, we'll get into that.
But for now, let's focus on those basic steps that you mentioned. What can our listeners do to make themselves less vulnerable to these attacks?
Okay, well, let's start with passwords.
Okay.
Welcome back to our deep dive on healthcare cybersecurity.
It's scary stuff, but like you said, knowledge is power.
Exactly.
The more we understand about these attacks,
Right.
the better we can protect ourselves.
Absolutely.
So let's unpack some more of these details. We were just talking about passwords.
Right.
What makes for a truly strong password these days?
Well, creating a strong password is like building a fortress for your data. You want it to be impenetrable. And the first thing to remember is that length matters. Aim for at least 12 characters. The longer, the better.
Got it.
Then think about complexity. You want to use a mix of upper and lowercase letter numbers, symbols.
Yeah.
It's like adding extra layers of bricks and mortar to those fortress walls.
Okay, I like that.
And lastly, avoid using the same password for multiple accounts. If one account is compromised, you don't want the attackers to have the keys to your entire kingdom.
Right. That's a great analogy. I've always struggled with remembering complex passwords for all my different accounts. Is there a way to make this fortress building a little bit easier?
Absolutely. That's where a password manager comes in. Think of it as a master key keeper for your digital fortress. It can generate strong, unique passwords for you and store them securely so you don't have to remember them all. You just need to remember one master password to unlock the vault.
Oh, that sounds much more manageable.
Much easier.
So strong passwords, check.
Yeah.
What about that other thing you mentioned, multi-factor authentication?
Right. Multi-factor authentication is like adding a moat and a drawbridge to your digital fortress. So even if someone gets over the wall, cracks your password, they still have to get past another layer of security.
Right.
It usually involves receiving a code on your phone or email that you have to enter to log in.
Okay.
It might seem like a little extra step, but it really does reduce the risk of unauthorized access.
That makes sense. So are we saying that every healthcare provider should have multi-factor authentication enabled? I know some hospitals, they have to access patient data really quickly in emergency situations.
Right.
Could that create a problem?
That's a great question. And the truth is, it's not always as simple as just flipping a switch.
Yeah.
Healthcare providers, they do face unique challenges when it comes to implementing multi-factor authentication.
Right.
They need to balance security with the need for that quick access to information, especially in those critical situations.
Of course.
So it requires some careful planning and consideration, which is why I think it's really important to ask your healthcare providers about their security practices
Okay.
and how they're addressing those challenges.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah.
It's not just about having the technology, it's about using it effectively and responsibly.
Exactly.
Speaking of technology, you mentioned phishing scams earlier, and it seems like those are everywhere these days.
Yeah, they are.
How can we avoid falling for those tricky traps?
Okay, well, phishing scams are kind of like those sneaky traps you see in adventure movies.
Okay.
They're designed to lure you in with something tempting, only to spring a trap and steal your valuables. But in the digital world, those valuables are your personal information.
Right.
Phishing attempts can come in all shapes and sizes. They can come through email, text messages, or even phone calls.
Wow.
And they often look really official, using logos and language that mimic legitimate organizations like your bank or even the government.
Oh, yeah. I bet they prey on our fears and anxieties, too.
Yeah.
Like, your account's been compromised or urgent action required.
Exactly. They create a sense of urgency to make you act without thinking, which is why it's so important to be vigilant.
Okay.
Don't click on links or open attachments from senders you don't know.
Okay.
And if something seems suspicious, don't respond. Instead, contact the organization directly through their official website or phone number to verify it's actually them.
So take a deep breath, think before you click, and always verify before you trust.
Got it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now let's maybe switch gears and go back to those specific breaches that we were discussing earlier.
Okay.
What can we learn from those cases that might help our listeners protect themselves?
Okay, well, let's revisit that North Bay healthcare breach. This case, I think, really highlights the value of robust data backup and recovery solutions.
Okay.
Remember, they potentially accessed a ton of data. In a situation like that, having a secure backup of your data could be a lifesaver.
Right. Because even if your systems are compromised, you can still restore your data from a clean backup.
Exactly.
And that can help minimize downtime and reduce the impact of the attack.
It can.
Okay.
And this is where solutions like those offered by Stonefly can be invaluable. They specialize in providing data protection and disaster recovery solutions that are designed to help organizations recover quickly and effectively from cyber attacks, including ransomware attacks.
It really does sound like Stonefly is at the forefront of data security,
They are.
especially for these sensitive sectors like healthcare.
For sure.
Their website, stonefly.com, is definitely worth checking out.
Definitely.
And if you want to speak to someone directly about your specific needs, you can reach out to their sales team at sales@stonefly.com.
Great.
Okay, now I'm curious about the River Region Cardiology breach that involved a third-party vendor.
Right.
What lessons can we learn from that case?
Well, the River Region Cardiology breach is a reminder that healthcare providers are only as strong as their weakest link. And in this case, it was a third-party vendor that had a security vulnerability.
Right.
This underscores the importance of doing your due diligence when you're choosing vendors.
Okay, so don't just assume that they have adequate security measures in place.
No, don't be afraid to ask tough questions. Demand proof of certifications, understand their incident response procedures, and make sure their security practices align with your organization's standards. Remember, you're entrusting them with your patient's sensitive data.
Right. It sounds like a good rule of thumb is trust, but verify.
Absolutely.
Make sure your partners are taking security as seriously as you are.
Yeah, for sure.
Now, earlier we talked about ransomware, and it seems like that's really becoming the weapon of choice for a lot of these cyber criminals who are targeting healthcare.
It is.
Why is that?
Well, ransomware is particularly insidious because it really targets an organization's most critical asset, their data.
Okay.
I mean, imagine a hospital having all of its patient records encrypted,
Right.
rendering them totally inaccessible. It can cripple their ability to provide care.
It's like a digital hostage situation.
It is.
And as we discussed earlier, the pressure to pay the ransom is immense.
Oh, absolutely. Healthcare providers are in a really difficult position. They have a responsibility to protect their patients' data, but they also have a responsibility to provide timely and effective care.
Right.
This pressure makes them much more likely to pay the ransom, which unfortunately just fuels the cycle of these attacks.
So what can be done to break this cycle?
Right.
I mean, is it even possible to fight back against these ransomware gangs?
It's a tough challenge, but I don't think it's hopeless. One crucial step is to prioritize those robust cybersecurity defenses.
Okay.
This includes things like strong passwords, multi-factor authentication, regular security updates, and of course, those comprehensive data backup and recovery solutions like the ones offered by Stonefly.
Right, because if your systems are locked down by ransomware, a secure backup could be your ticket to getting back up and running without giving in to those attackers' demands.
Exactly.
So it seems like having a plan in place before an attack happens is critical.
Oh, it's essential. It's not just about having the technology. It's about having a well-rehearsed incident response plan. Knowing what to do in the event of an attack, who to contact, how to restore your systems, can make a world of difference in minimizing the impact.
So preparedness is key.
It is.
Now, what about that third breach, Delta Health?
Right.
You mentioned there was a pretty significant delay in notifying those affected individuals.
Yeah.
What can we learn from that?
Well, I think the Delta Health breach highlights the importance of timely detection and response.
Okay.
The longer it takes to identify and contain a breach, the more damage the attackers can do and the greater the risk to patient data. It's a reminder that even with the best security measures in place, vigilance is key.
Right.
Organizations need to have systems in place to monitor for suspicious activity and respond quickly if a breach is detected.
So it's not just about building those walls. It's about having guards on the watchtowers constantly scanning for threats.
Yeah, exactly. Vigilance is key.
Vigilance is key.
And that brings us to another really important point.
Okay.
While prevention is always the best strategy, preparedness is equally crucial. What happens if, despite everyone's best efforts, a breach does occur?
Right.
That's where that robust incident response plan and a reliable data recovery solution like Stonefly can make all the difference.
Right. Having that plan in place and the ability to restore your data from a secure backup can help you get back on your feet quickly and minimize the damage.
Absolutely.
So to recap, we've talked about strong passwords, multi-factor authentication phishing scams, the importance of due diligence with those third-party vendors, and the threat of ransomware. It's a lot to digest.
It is.
But it's clear that cybersecurity is a multifaceted challenge.
For sure. And it's a shared responsibility, too.
Yeah.
Healthcare providers need to take the lead in implementing those robust security measures, but patients have a role to play as well. By being informed, proactive, and vigilant, we can all contribute to creating a more secure healthcare ecosystem.
Well said. Now, before we move on to our final segment, I think we should take a moment to acknowledge the emotional side of these breaches. It's easy to get caught up in the technical details,
Yeah.
but we can't forget about the human impact.
Right.
For patients whose data has been compromised, this can be a really stressful and upsetting experience.
Oh, absolutely. Data breaches aren't just about numbers and statistics. They have a real impact on people's lives.
They do.
Yeah.
So what can healthcare providers do to support their patients in the wake of a breach?
Yeah.
And what can patients do to cope with that emotional fallout?
Right.
I think we should delve into that in our final segment.
Yeah, let's do it.
Stay tuned. Welcome back to the Deep Dive. We spent this episode talking about the growing threat of cyber attacks in healthcare, and frankly, it can be a bit overwhelming.
Mm,
But before we wrap up, I think we should shift gears and focus on empowerment. What can our listeners do starting today to protect themselves?
that's a great question. And the good news is, even though these attacks are getting more and more sophisticated, there is still plenty of things we can do as individuals to make ourselves less vulnerable. A lot of it comes down to practicing good cyber hygiene, those everyday habits that can really make a difference.
Cyber hygiene. I like that. It's like brushing your teeth for your digital life.
Eh.
So where do we start? What are some practical tips that our listeners can put into practice right away?
Well, we've talked about strong passwords and multi-factor authentication. Those are really foundational. But let's go a step further. Think about your social media presence. We often share a lot of personal information online without even realizing it.
Yeah, you're right. It's so easy to post about your vacation plans or share that you're at the doctor's office.
Yeah.
We don't always think about who might be watching.
Exactly. And attackers can use that information to build a profile of you, identify your vulnerabilities, and target you with scams. So be mindful of what you share online. Ask yourself, do I really need to post this? And be cautious about accepting friend requests from people you don't know.
It's like we're creating this digital footprint with every post and every click,
Right.
and we need to be aware of what that footprint is revealing.
That's a great way to put it. Now let's talk about another common tactic that cybercriminals use: phishing scams. These are attempts to trick you into giving up personal information like passwords or credit card numbers by posing as a legitimate organization.
Right, those emails that look like they're from your bank or a trusted online retailer, they can be so convincing.
They can, and they often play on our emotions, creating a sense of urgency or fear to make us act without thinking. That's why it's so important to be skeptical. Don't click on links or open attachments from senders you don't recognize. Hover over the link to see if the URL actually matches what's displayed. Look for misspellings or grammatical errors. Those are often red flags. And if something seems off even a little bit, don't respond. Contact the organization directly through their official website or phone number to verify it's really them.
So it's all about taking a moment to pause and assess before you take any action. Don't let fear or urgency cloud your judgment.
Exactly. And remember, if you do fall victim to a phishing scam or if you suspect that your information has been compromised, don't panic. Take immediate steps to mitigate the damage. Change your passwords, contact your bank or credit card company, and report the incident to the authorities.
Good advice. It's better to be safe than sorry. And speaking of being safe, we've talked a lot about Stonefly and their data protection and disaster recovery solutions throughout this episode. Can you elaborate a little bit on why those solutions are so important in the context of healthcare cybersecurity?
Absolutely. Stonefly offers a range of solutions that are designed specifically to help healthcare providers protect their sensitive data and ensure business continuity in the event of a cyber attack. They offer things like secure data backup and recovery, disaster recovery as a service, and tools to enhance your overall cybersecurity posture.
So it's not just about protecting against ransomware, it's about having a plan in place to recover quickly and effectively if an attack does happen. It's like having a safety net for your data.
That's a great analogy. Stonefly can help you build that safety net and give you peace of mind knowing that your data is protected. If you're interested in learning more, I highly recommend visiting their website at stonefly.com. They have tons of information about their solutions and how they can help organizations in the healthcare sector.
And for those who want to talk to someone directly about their specific needs, they can reach out to Stonefly's sales team at sales@stonefly.com. They're experts in this field and can provide guidance on how to best protect your organization's data.
Definitely. And remember, cybersecurity is a shared responsibility. Healthcare providers need to take the lead, but patients have a role to play too.
By staying informed, being proactive, and practicing good cyber hygiene, we can all contribute to a safer and more secure healthcare ecosystem. And on that note, I think it's time to wrap up this deep dive.
Thanks for having me. It's been a pleasure exploring this important topic with you and our listeners.
It really has been an eye-opening conversation. We've covered a lot of ground, from the motivations of these cyber criminals to the steps that we can all take to protect ourselves. The threat of cyber attacks is real, but by understanding the risks and taking those proactive steps to mitigate them, we can navigate this digital world with more confidence and security.
I agree. Well said. Remember, knowledge is power. Stay informed, stay vigilant, and stay safe online.
And if you're looking for solutions to enhance your cybersecurity posture, remember that Stonefly is there to help. You can check them out at stonefly.com or contact sales@stonefly.com. Thanks for joining us on the deep dive. Until next time, stay curious and stay secure.